We were discussing earlier different ways to see Braj and see Krishna and see Gauranga's Leela from the Aishvarya consideration or Madhurya consideration, from the mental plane of tattva and truth and reality and history and Rasa Siddhanta, and from the heart also, just the feeling of the Leela and the feelings in the hearts of the players in the Leela and Parishads. So seeing Lord Chaitanya in these extraordinary ecstasies, which are, although they're byproducts of the richest experience of Madhurya, the exhibitions themselves are like some type of phantasmagoria of Aishvarya, of like mystic powers or mystic cities. Who can jump in the ocean and go under the waves and ride around for hours and hours and come up not dead? Totally in samadhi. So he's just floating in those waves, joints extended. So the ghee of Ekachakra has a very peculiar flavor. It's the wood it's the cow dung that it's cooked on. It's the cows that give the ghee, and it's the gwals that make the ghee. It's the food of Ekachakra, the grains of Ekachakra that they're eating. All these things, they determine the end result, and more things also. The cows of Ekachakra are breathing the air of Ekachakra and drinking the Yamuna which flows through there. Bankim Rai, he came from there, from that Yamuna. So when they sell ghee, some little bit they have, sometimes they sell. And there's a wonderful fragrance, so amazing. So they say in the psychology and human psychology, the different sense activities leave a samskara, impression on our mind. Impressions of smell, impressions of sight, impressions of sound, even a sense of touch, sparsha. They leave some imprint on the mind, sanskara. So someone maybe smelled some particular food, has a distinctive aroma. So that's recorded in their distinction brain, where all the distinctive things are recorded. So this ghee, we're tasting the ghee and seeing Lord Nityananda, and tasting the ghee and feeling that we're in Ekachakra. So this is the power of Udipan. People take drugs and they alter their consciousness, and then they have different perceptions and sensitivities and heightened states of awareness sometimes, or lower states of awareness also. They become aware of it. Because oftentimes when people open themselves, they become subject to the invading of lower creatures. So you can have some very low vibration experiences because they live just beyond the cover. The bhutas and pretas and pishachas and all the subtle beings, they live just beyond the ego, in the border of ego and ether. That's their place. So when you scratch the blackboard with a shock, or that pierces the ethers and makes a hole in the ethers, so these subtle beings come in. So they say it's inauspicious because that sound, and there's some other different things, sounds which make it like you have a wall and no one can get through the wall. It's a wall of a prison. If somebody drills a hole through the wall, everyone can run through. As long as the wall is there, no one can penetrate or go through. So these beings are just beyond our. We can't see them, but they're. So when we whistling these are called amangal in the Vedic Dharma. Whistling, somebody's whistling also, like dog whistles, police whistles, all these things. Track or something. This sound is like scratching on a blackboard. It opens the ethers, and the subtle beings, the negative tamasic beings, they come inside. So also when people are expanded like this. Yeah, I mean a squeaky door, hinge is squeaky. That's inauspicious, but I don't know if it has the same effect. I'm not sure. Yeah, I told it's inauspicious, and I think it also maybe attract those beings also. It should be attended to quickly. You have a door, creaking door, like out of the monster movies, that you have to have. You can't have a normal door if you just open the door. It's like, well, there's no suspense in the movie. The door is creaking and the violins are squeaking, Doors creaking and squeaking, creaking, squeaking. Like Alfred Hitchcock or something. And then the music, this creaking of the door and the music's reaching a crescendo and all of a sudden, it's like some horrible thing. And what is that most horrible thing is to see actually all your anarthas. And then that's the scariest thing, to actually look and see inside the shell. Because we're covered with so many shells, and sometimes Krishna pushes our nose into the shell. Like when you're training a dog, you put his nose in his expansions, that's so to speak. Byproducts, you can say. 6 changes, growing and maintenance and byproducts. So Krishna pushes our nose in our shells, in our covering shells. He says, this is a covering here that it's you. So we have to remove the cover. So these type of experiences with the senses come under the category of anubhav. Because anubhav is external expression of inner emotions. So, and then when they intensify, even when they discuss rasa tattva, they mix sattvic bhav, although they break them up into 5 components of ras, sthaya rati, vibhav, anubhav, sanchari bhavs, like this. But generally, this sattvic bhav is considered the difference between a sattvic bhav and anubhav. Anubhav is voluntary, and you feel like you're about to cry. I'm just going to cry. No, I shouldn't cry. No, I'm just going to cry. So that's voluntary. So because there's crying, there's ashru, is one of the anubhavas. You cry, something happens. Oh, that's terrible. You just start crying. And some voluntary, but the sattvic bhavas are involuntary. They're involuntary, immediate. You don't have time to think. Yes, cry. No, I shouldn't cry. I should hold my cry, or whatever. If there's any kind of conscious hold or control over the external emotions, crying or laughing or other things, but the writers of Ras and also Rupa Goswami, he's explaining something called Sadharani Karan. Sadharani Karan means to act or to equalize. We discussed, to commonize or equalize, try to equalize your feelings and emotions with the emotions and feelings of the lead characters, the Nayak and Nayaka, Radha and Krishna, the Gopis and the Manjaris and Radharani, in our case, by reading their lilas. And so when they describe it, it's what the sadhaka is supposed to identify with is the anubhavas. Because the anubhavas are that's how we can know the heart. We can know the heart or the feelings of the eternal associate, like say Tulsi Manjari, Raghunath Das Goswami, Tulsi Manjari. We can know the position of the heart by seeing the anubhavas. And because the Manjaris are above Tadatmi with Radharani, when they see, Radharani's crying, then they automatically cry, or they cry voluntarily as an anubhav, or they just immediately start crying when she starts crying. So they say that when you're reading the Shastras, and you should be careful to see the anubhavas, how are they expressing the movements. That's why I was just looking at some of these things and trying to apply to the Ras Lila, and how all the different temperaments and different moods are shown in different scenes of the Ras drama. So these physical expressions showing the position of the heart, it's like something like this. For example, the prelude. the gopis come out to see Krishna for the rasa dance, and the Maharasi plays the flute in the Bhagavatam. He comes out. They come out to meet him. And then they're standing there, and then he's speaking so harshly and rebuking them, and follow Dharma and go home, and what are you doing here, and Swagatam, and why you came, and it's not a place for you, and so much Dharma, and they were really disappointed and unhappy. So they were expressing their heart. They hung their heads down. They're drawing lines. They were scribbling in the ground with their toes, scribbling like this. And that's in the Rasa Shastra. It's called one of the Sanchari Bhavas. It's just like a wave on the Staya Bhava. It's Chinta. It's called anxiety, and anxiety is expressed this way, this one way. Very interesting expression. So if someone's reading that, then how you take the anubhavas to try to identify with the bhava in the heart is that you hang your head down. In other words, the Sakhis are hanging their... So if Radharani, all the Sakhis are hanging their heads down listening to Krishna, they can't even look at him. So then you look at it, and you're reading, and you're thinking, meditating, you have your head down, and then you may move your toes to the ground. This is called, it's very interesting. I was studying this Sadharani Karan. It takes this, and then, a lot of it is you're praying, and because you're supposed to, in other words, imagine or visualize or feel the heart of the person you're identifying with. And the examples Rupa Goswami gives is someone identifies with Hanuman in the Ramayana play that he's watching. Or you can imagine you go to Jai Shringara and watch the Ras Leela, and then somehow there's one scene where the gopis catch Krishna and they tie him up, and they say, "Oh, you can't tie me! Don't tie him up!" You're really involved. Otherwise, you're sitting there. So, Rupa Goswami is explaining. Some person's in the audience. He doesn't have Siddha Pranali. He's not in a bona fide, whatever you call it, proper traditional parampara. He's just a man. He describes one man sitting in the audience was so quote unquote into it and so much identifying, and Siddharani Karan, he was mixing and equalization of his feelings. He was just it was so much ras. This is the theory, and this is how drama works. And Rupa Goswami is repeating these examples to illustrate the same points with Siddharani Karan and Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So as ras works that way in the material sense, well, also the spiritual rasas work that way, with some slight variation and further elaboration by Rupa Goswami to put Radha and Krishna in the center instead of Romeo and Juliet or some other mundane persons. So this is somebody, and like Hanuman, Ram says, so who can jump across the ocean? And Hanuman just had his head down, and so this guy was in the audience. He had his head down, and so Hanuman and Jambavan, he spoke first. He said, "Oh, yeah, I could easily jump across. Even now, I can jump across, but I don't think I have enough strength to jump back." And so, well, that's no good. We have to get a report in the news, and you have to find Sita, give her my ring, and come back and tell the physician and tell her I'm about to save her, this and that. Help is on its way. So then they ask Anjana or some different big bandurs, big monkeys, and they all were saying they're too old, or they passed their prime, retired monkeys type of thing. If you can imagine. When they retire, I don't know. They just run till they drop. They're really on the move. As soon as they're born, they start jumping and running. It's like you want to have you have some friends. Look, I bet you one rascal. See that monkey? Look at your watch. I'm sure within 90 seconds he'll change his position. Toot, 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 toot. Toot. He jumps out somewhere. So we laugh when we hear about the characteristics or the vyavahara, whatever they call it, of the monkey. But the real joke is on us because the biggest monkey is sitting on our shoulders. The biggest monkey is sitting on our shoulders, and who is it? It's monkey me. Monkey me. And it's the mind, the monkey of the mind. So when we sit in japa, we don't stay, our mind doesn't stay in one place for 90 seconds either. And then it goes, it goes from the lila to the pizza to the metro. And back to the, to that. It's amazing. It's amazing. It's amazing.